Han Li reclined in the grand tutor chair, where Dr. Mo had so often sat before, holding a scroll whose cover bore the title Longevity Scripture, though its true contents were actually the cultivation formula of the longevity art. He read it with complete absorption, utterly engrossed. Dr. Mo had often held this very book, reading it over and over without ever growing tired of it. Han Li had once found that rather strange. Now that he had uncovered its secret, he finally understood. Dr. Mo had never been studying methods of preserving health at all. He had been carefully contemplating the cultivation formula of the longevity art. It seemed that Dr. Mo had never truly accepted his inability to cultivate magical power. He had not completely believed Yu Zitong's explanation about the spiritual root, and had continued trying to comprehend the longevity art on his own in silence. Han Li had discovered this secret manual hidden together with several other items inside the concealed compartment. Besides containing the first 6 layers of the cultivation formula that he had already practiced, it also recorded the final 2 layers that he had never seen before. This unexpected discovery left him excited for quite some time. When Han Li realized that what he had been cultivating all along was actually the legendary magical power capable of commanding the wind and rain, his desire for the remaining stages of the longevity art grew even stronger. After all, who wouldn't dream of becoming an immortal with eternal life? The sun was now shining brightly overhead. Warm rays streamed in through the open skylight, bathing Han Li in gentle sunlight. The pleasant warmth made him narrow his eyes into thin slits as he read. Coupled with his relaxed reclining posture, he looked exceptionally lazy and at ease. Han Li raised his head slightly and glanced at the skylight, finding the sunlight a little too dazzling. Casually, he lifted the open book over his face, blocking the glaring white sunlight. Darkness immediately fell before his eyes, bringing a welcome sense of comfort. Feeling refreshed, he silently memorized the cultivation formula for the 7th layer of Eternal Spring art once again. Recently, he had already sensed signs that his longevity art was on the verge of another breakthrough. Thanks to his continuous consumption of spiritual medicines, he would soon advance to the 7th layer. Becoming familiar with the next stage's cultivation method in advance would undoubtedly help him break through the bottleneck. More than half a year had now passed since the day Dr. Mo attempted soul seizing. On the very next day after that incident, to conceal any signs of Dr. Mo's death, Han Li personally imitated Dr. Mo's handwriting and wrote a forged letter claiming that Dr. Mo had returned to his hometown to visit relatives. He submitted the letter, under Dr. Mo's name, to the inspection elder of the sect. In the letter, he unceremoniously wrote in Dr. Mo's voice, claiming that he had inherited all of Dr. Mo's medical skills and was now fully qualified to treat illnesses and injuries independently. As for Dr. Mo himself, because the journey home was so long, no one knew when he would return. Therefore, the letter requested that the various sect masters allow Han Li to temporarily assume Dr. Mo's duties until his return. After the letter was submitted, the managing elders showed virtually no suspicion. Dr. Mo had often spent years away from the mountain collecting medicinal herbs. Although he officially held the title of honorary elder within the Seven Mysteries Sect, because he had once saved sect leader Wang's life, he was in practice treated as a guest elder and enjoyed exceptional freedom. However, the elders remained skeptical of the letter's claim that Han Li had inherited all of Dr. Mo's medical expertise. They believed it only half-heartedly. Although Dr. Mo had occasionally treated ordinary ailments such as colds, fevers, cuts, and spear wounds for lower-ranking disciples, his medical skills were simply too exceptional. His primary patients had always been hall masters, elders, and other middle and upper-ranking figures. Most ordinary disciples sought treatment from the other physicians on the mountain instead. For that reason, the elders did not immediately allow Han Li to take over Dr. Mo's responsibilities. Instead, they first assigned him to treat the lower-ranking disciples, intending to test the true extent of his medical abilities. Han Li cared little whether the sect's leaders doubted his skills. He truly did not mind whom he treated. The only reason he wanted to take over Dr. Mo's position was because he had his eye on the secluded tranquility of Divine Hand Valley and its sizable medicinal garden. If he could continue living in the valley and keep the entire place under his sole control, he would be able to use the Mysterious Vial openly to accelerate the growth of rare medicinal herbs in large quantities without worrying that anyone would discover its secret. Although the small valley was currently used only by him, if Dr. Mo failed to return for an extended period, who could say whether the sect masters or elders might suddenly decide to reclaim it? Therefore, determined to demonstrate his exceptional medical skills, Han Li spared no effort when treating the disciples. He secretly used large quantities of the precious medicinal herbs he cultivated each day. As a result, combining his already impressive medical expertise with an abundant supply of rare medicines, he achieved what was almost a mortal miracle. Virtually every patient who came to him recovered as soon as the medicine was administered. Thus, just as he had anticipated, his reputation for miraculous healing spread like a thunderclap on a clear day, rapidly shaking the entire Seven Mysteries Sect. Everyone across the mountain soon knew that the sect had produced yet another young divine physician with extraordinary medical skills. This divine physician's abilities could only be described as unfathomably miraculous. Under his treatment, whether it was external injuries, internal wounds, or rare and difficult illnesses, he could restore you to full health in, at most, 3 days. Compared with that divine physician, Dr. Mo, his skills were in no way inferior and, in fact, even surpassed him. In truth, Han Li's medical skills were still far below those of Dr. Mo. It was only because Dr. Mo could never possess so many rare medicinal ingredients to waste so freely that, in terms of recovery results, he was naturally far inferior to Han Li. Thus, after Han Li once again brought a severely injured disciple back to full vitality within just a few days, the higher-ups could no longer sit still. Barely a day later, someone was sent to summon him. This time, the person he met was unexpectedly someone he had only once crossed paths with before, the vice sect leader Ma, whom he had seen at the bone refining cliff. This sect master Ma had clearly already forgotten all about Han Li, the once insignificant registered disciple. Upon seeing him, he directly stated that he was willing to let Han Li take over Dr. Mo's work and enjoy all of Dr. Mo's previous year. However, the title of honorary elder could not yet be granted to him, as Han Li was still too young, only 16 or 17 years old, and could not possibly convince the others to accept him. Nevertheless, his actual monthly salary would be issued according to the standards of an honorary elder. Finally, Sect Master Ma also stated that if there was anything else he was dissatisfied with, he could raise it in person and they would consider it accordingly. The other party's generous attitude made Han Li realize that as long as his demands were not too excessive, they would most likely be approved. It seemed that his original expectations could be achieved quite easily. However, such generous treatment was already rare even within the Seven Mysteries Sect. It showed that the upper echelons clearly understood what a divine physician with outstanding medical skills meant to those in the martial world. Han Li was not polite either. He immediately requested that Divine Hand Valley be given to him alone for residence, and that no outsiders be allowed to disturb him while he studied medicine in the valley. Such a request, which could hardly even be considered a condition, was naturally agreed to without hesitation by Sect Master Ma. Perhaps in order to win Han Li over, the other party even took the initiative to propose sending a young and beautiful maid to attend to his daily needs. For a moment, Han Li was stirred by this unexpected bargaining chip, his heart nearly wavering toward acceptance. But after calming down and thinking of the many secrets he bore, he still felt a pang of reluctance and firmly refused. His actions earned Sect Master Ma considerable admiration, who began to regard him in a new light, constantly praising him for being young and promising, not indulging in women, and even joking that if he had a daughter, he would certainly marry her off to him. Hearing these words, Han Li could only smile wryly. It was not that he was uninterested in women, but simply that he could not afford to be at the moment. And so, Divine Hand Valley became Han Li's private domain, where outsiders were generally not allowed to enter without permission. For this reason, Han Li specifically placed a large bell at the valley entrance. Whoever wished to see him only needed to ring the bell, and he would immediately leave the valley to meet them. This strange rule was posted boldly beside the bell, and even senior and mid-level figures were not exempt. The reason Han Li established such an eccentric rule was entirely to prevent even the slightest possibility of the bottle's secret being exposed. As long as no one barged into the valley, he could ensure that the bottle's heaven-defying uses would never be discovered by a second person. At first, this rule did not matter much to low-ranking disciples, but it greatly displeased many high-level figures who believed Han Li was being overly arrogant and ignorant of his place. Even Dr. Mo had never been so presumptuous. How could a mere newly graduated apprentice act so recklessly? However, after Han Li pulled a certain severely injured protector back from the brink of death and fully healed him, all such complaints vanished without a trace and were never mentioned again. No one would risk offending a divine physician who might save their life multiple times over something trivial. Thus, the practice of meeting only by ringing the bell was naturally regarded as an eccentric habit befitting a divine physician. As days passed, even several sect masters gradually came to accept this rule. When they needed medical treatment, they would respectfully send someone to ring the great bell before courteously inviting Han Li over. In this way, Han Li gradually became an odd legend within the Seven Mysteries Sect. To call him a higher-up, he held no official position and possessed no real authority. To call him a low-ranking disciple, yet who had ever seen such an influential disciple? Even the sect masters addressed him respectfully as Dr. Han when they met him. Few now dared to call his name directly. Of course, this did not include our Li Feiyu, senior brother Li. Li Feiyu still maintained his cold and aloof demeanor in front of others, but the moment he saw Han Li, he immediately switched back to a rather roguish attitude, addressing him directly and without any politeness. Unlike Wang Depang and other disciples, he did not grow distant or respectful just because of Han Li's change in status. This, however, made Han Li feel somewhat comforted. After all, the taste of being truly alone was not pleasant. Whenever Han Li thought of Li Feiyu's playful expression, he couldn't help but think of another long-faced, bitter-looking acquaintance. Not long ago, he had unexpectedly met another old acquaintance from when they once traveled into the mountains together, the current core disciple of the Seven Absolutes Hall, Wu Yan. He was suffering from a strange illness that was neither severe nor mild, yet stubbornly resistant to treatment by ordinary quacks. Tormented by it, he had no choice but to rely on sect master Ma's influence to seek treatment from divine physician Han. It had to be said that Wu Yan had a very good memory. Upon seeing the renowned Dr. Han, he immediately recognized his former travel companion in the same carriage, Han Li. The shock and strange expression on his face were still vividly remembered by Han Li to this day. After all, Wu Yan had not treated Han Li particularly well back then. If anything, he had been somewhat hostile. Seeing Wu Yan's awkwardness, Han Li found it somewhat amusing, but of course he would not refuse to treat him because of it. However, in order to protect his own reputation, Han Li deliberately increased the dosage of the medicine, allowing Wu Yan to be cured within just 2 days. During the recovery process, the overly strong medicinal effect caused him quite a bit more pain. This could be considered a small punishment from Han Li for his past attitude. It seemed Han Li was not as magnanimous as he believed. In truth, he still bore grudges quite well. In this way, Han Li gradually and completely replaced Dr. Mo's position on the mountain, even surpassing it. At present, every day he would take out the small bottle and place it in an open area within the valley. Every 7 or 8 days, it would produce a batch of miraculous green liquid, which he used to cultivate rare herbs of great age and then carefully refine various medicines. Only a very small portion of these were used for patients who came seeking treatment. The majority was consumed by Han Li himself to nourish his essence, cultivate his qi, and advance the practice of the longevity art. Han Li gently adjusted his body on the grand tutor chair to make himself more comfortable. Although he was sitting in Dr. Mo's chair, this was not Dr. Mo's house, but Han Li's own residence. He had simply taken everything he deemed useful from Dr. Mo's dwelling without the slightest hesitation and moved it into his own room. With his current status, even if others saw such disrespect toward Dr. Mo, no one would do anything about it. After all, in their eyes, Han Li's importance had already surpassed Dr. Mo's. People were very realistic. In truth, Dr. Mo's residence was much larger than Han Li's. It would have been more suitable to move in there instead. Unfortunately, Han Li always felt it was strange to live there. After all, Dr. Mo's death was closely related to him. Living openly in the home of someone he had personally killed made him feel a chill in his heart. It simply did not feel right. His own humble abode was still more reassuring and comfortable. However, whenever he thought of Dr. Mo, Han Li could not help but recall the frustration of still being bound by a dead man. During this period, he carefully examined his body inside and out several times, and indeed discovered a faint, incomprehensible cold and sinister presence lurking within his dantian. He tried taking clear spirit powder and various other detoxification methods, but none of them worked. It seemed that the journey a year later was unavoidable. After sitting motionless for a long while, Han Li suddenly raised his right hand and extended a single finger straight upward, an action that looked somewhat inexplicable. Soon after, a trace of spatial fluctuation appeared half an inch above his fingertip. A few sparks emerged out of thin air, and the moment they appeared, they immediately turned, within a distorted space, into a walnut-sized red fireball. Though small, it radiated intense heat that quickly spread throughout the entire room. Han Li's face remained covered by a book, as if he were asleep and unmoving. Only the small fireball above his fingertip continuously emitted a faint sizzling sound. Compared to his motionless finger, it looked especially striking. Time passed minute by minute. The fireball maintained its unusual vitality without any sign of extinguishing. However, Han Li finally showed a change in reaction. His fingertip, supporting the fireball, began to tremble slightly. At first it was only the finger, but as time went on, his wrist, his entire arm, and eventually his whole body began to tremble. Suddenly, Han Li sat straight up from the grand tutor chair, not even noticing that the book on his face had slid to the ground. He stared fixedly at the small fireball on his fingertip. His face flushed a deep red from holding his breath. From his forehead down to the exposed skin of his neck, fine beads of sweat seeped out, as if he had just finished some intense physical exercise, his whole body radiating heat. After a moment, the fireball began to sway, as Han Li's entire body trembled violently. The flames on it kept growing and shrinking, unable to remain stable. Before long, it finally grew smaller and smaller, turning back into sparks and vanishing into the air. Once the fireball disappeared, Han Li slumped back into the chair, as if all the strength had been drained from his spine, looking utterly exhausted, as though he had just performed something that consumed an enormous amount of energy. This fire pellet technique really is hard to master. After nearly half a year of study, I still haven't fully grasped its essence. I've only managed to slightly extend the time it can manifest, Han Li muttered to himself while staring at the ceiling. It turned out that in the final pages of the longevity art manual, there were also several rudimentary spells recorded. At a glance, they were clearly introductory techniques for cultivators, treasures in Han Li's eyes. For several nights in a row, he had been so excited that he could not sleep. This was hardly surprising. Ever since witnessing the spells performed by Dr. Mo, Han Li had developed a strong interest in these unbelievable, profoundly mysterious powers. However, the pity was that although Han Li now possessed the peak 6th layer power of the longevity art, he was like a beggar holding a golden bowl, knowing nothing about spellcasting techniques and completely ignorant of even the most basic principles of magic. Yet now, he had suddenly discovered several sets of incantations suitable for a beginner like him. How could he not be overjoyed? The spells recorded in the final pages included 5 incantations: the Fire Pellet Technique, Spirit Calming Talisman, Wind Control Art, Object Control Art, and Heavenly Eye Technique. Every single line of these incantations felt obscure, profound, and difficult for Hanli to comprehend. This was hardly surprising, as the wording of these incantations was composed in a rather archaic style. Although he had read many books before, his mastery in this area was still shallow, so he naturally could not grasp their meaning at once. Helpless, Hanli once again summoned the same desperate determination he had used when first learning the longevity art. He plunged himself into piles of books on classical texts and began a relentless study of the true meaning behind the incantations, day and night. Every sentence, every word was scrutinized and pondered dozens of times before he would let it go, ensuring there would be no ambiguity in his understanding. Even though he had never studied any spells before, he well understood that if such overwhelming power were used incorrectly, the consequences would be far more terrifying than chi deviation from inner energy going berserk. It could very well cost him his life in an instant. For his own safety, Hanli remained extremely cautious, not daring to be even slightly careless. After 3 months of deep study, Hanli finally managed to fully comprehend these incantations on a theoretical level. Only then did he begin his true practical training in spellcasting. This hands-on practice dealt him quite a blow. He had originally thought that, with the intelligence he had shown in learning the blink sword technique, learning spells would not be too difficult. But who could have expected that he would become astonishingly clumsy in this area? Even though he understood the principles, he simply could not execute them correctly in practice. Either his hand seals were wrong, his chanting was incorrect, or his magical energy was not properly delivered. He seemed to become almost dull-witted all over. Hanli had no solution for this. If it had been a problem of insufficient magical energy, he could still solve it by taking a couple more spirit pills. But this was clearly a limitation in his own ability. It seemed his talent for spellcasting was not as strong as he had imagined. This was the conclusion he reached after much hardship. After a long period of arduous training, Hanli finally achieved some small success in the fire pellet technique and the heavenly eye technique. As for the other 3 spells, he had not even managed to get past the threshold. There was no effect at all. Feeling discouraged, he shifted all his focus to the 2 techniques he could currently manage, placing considerable hope in them. Among them, the power of the fire pellet technique did not disappoint him. In fact, it far exceeded his expectations. Though the fireball was not large in size, the terrifying heat contained within it was capable of incinerating almost anything without resistance, burning everything in its path. Even weapons forged from refined steel would have the moment of contact instantly melted in a molten iron when struck by the fireball. After witnessing such inhuman destructive power, Hanli even tried throwing the fireball onto the surface of water. As a result, the entire stretch of water ignited instantly like oil, showing no sign whatsoever of being restrained by water. Only after fully understanding the true power of the fire pellet technique did Hanli finally comprehend why Yuzidong had such an aloof disdain for mortals. Imagine this. A cultivator who has only just grasped a bit of magic could easily use a minor spell like the fire pellet technique to effortlessly kill so-called martial experts of the Jianghu. If a more powerful cultivator were to act instead, wouldn't they sweep through the entire martial world, invincible under heaven? With such a vast disparity in strength, it is no wonder that cultivators like Yu Zitong regard ordinary people with the eyes of ants. As for another spell, the heavenly eye technique. After witnessing the extraordinary nature of the fire pellet technique, Hanli also held high expectations for it. But only after truly casting it did Hanli realize that this spell was merely a minor trick that channels magical power into the eyes. It was not difficult at all, so simple that he picked it up immediately. However, its function matched its simplicity. It was purely an auxiliary spell used to observe whether a person's body contained magical power and to what extent that power was present. At first, Hanli was quite enthusiastic about it. He repeatedly applied the heavenly eye technique to his own eyes, then used his enhanced vision to examine his own body. In the end, he saw a faint white glow enveloping him, and the closer it was to his dantian, the more concentrated the glow became. So this must be what is called magical power. After seeing it, Hanli couldn't help but reach out to touch the white light, but he felt nothing at all. It seemed that magical power, like inner energy, was formless and intangible, only observable through the heavenly eye technique. However, after several uses in succession, Hanli completely lost interest in it, because in the entire Seven Mysteries Sect, he was the only one who could be considered even a half-cultivator. Who was he supposed to observe with the heavenly eye technique? He couldn't possibly spend all day admiring himself. Thus, aside from continuing to intensify his practice of the fire pellet technique in hopes of mastering it for actual combat, Hanli also turned his attention to several other spells he had not yet learned, beginning repetitive practice and experimentation step by step, hoping to achieve further breakthroughs. Thinking about the difficulty of mastering those other techniques, Hanli, whose strength had only slightly recovered, couldn't help but sigh again. He realized that ever since he began practicing spells, he had been sighing far more often than before. Clang, clang. A deep, heavy bell sound echoed from outside the valley. Anlifronat. Recently, for some unknown reason, the number of people seeking medical treatment had suddenly increased, and most of them were suffering from external injuries such as severed limbs, blade wounds, and sword cuts. He did not dare to delay. Knowing that saving lives was urgent, he grabbed the medical kit he had prepared in advance and rushed out of the house straight toward the valley entrance. At the exit of the forest outside the valley, Hanli saw a senior disciple dressed in fine clothing pacing anxiously beneath the giant bell, like an ant on a hot pan. As soon as he saw Hanli, he immediately rushed up in great delight. "Dr. Han, you're finally here. My master has been poisoned by a deadly toxin and is on the verge of death. Please hurry and see if you can cure it." As the man approached, Hanli recognized him as somewhat familiar. He had seen him a few times before. He was Marong, the prized disciple of Elder Li, ranked 5th in the sect. He had accompanied his master to Divine Hand Valley to meet Hanli several times, so they could be considered at least acquaintances. "Poison?" Hanli asked as he hurried along with him, inwardly cursing his bad luck. After all, he himself still had an unresolved poison in his body. "Yes. When my master was handling matters down the mountain, he fought a master from the Wild Wolf gang and was struck by one of their hidden green darts. At first, he didn't take it seriously and even killed the opponent. But who knew that once he returned to the mountain, the poison immediately flared up and he fell unconscious. Did you consult other doctors?" "Of course we did. If it were ordinary poison, I wouldn't have come to trouble Divine Dr. Han. Those quack doctors only managed to determine that my master had been hit by some rare toxin, but beyond that, they knew nothing. They didn't even dare to prescribe a remedy." As he spoke, Marong showed a look of contempt, clearly very dissatisfied with the other physicians. After hearing this, Hanli's expression did not change. He simply responded with a soft and continued on his way, but inwardly he felt a bit uneasy. To be honest, he was not very skilled in detoxification. For treating internal or external injuries, he still had some confidence thanks to several good medicines in his possession. But if it was to cure some rare and deadly poison, he had no real certainty. Although he did possess a universal antidote known as the clear spirit powder, poisons in the world were countless and varied. Who could say whether the clear spirit powder would actually counteract this particular toxin? Moreover, the other doctors on the mountain were not useless hacks either. They had their own unique methods for treating injuries and poisons, common problems in the martial world. Otherwise, they would have long been driven off the mountain by the sect's higher-ups. After all, those people value their lives greatly and would not tolerate a group of incompetents. However, now they had not even dared to prescribe any remedy, which showed that this poison was truly troublesome and no ordinary substance. He could only respond to whatever came and adapt accordingly. Even if he could not save them, it would not tarnish his reputation. After all, no divine physician could truly cure all diseases or treat every ailment. It would not have much impact on his standing within the sect. While Hanli was carefully pondering countermeasures, Marron was practically half-carrying Han Li as they jogged along, tightly pulling his sleeve as he rushed toward Elder Li's residence. Seeing his brisk and urgent manner, Han Li could tell that the bond between master and disciple was indeed very deep. A trace of melancholy rose in Han Li's heart as he thought of the relationship between himself and Dr. Mo, nominally master and disciple, but in reality adversaries. If only they could have been as harmonious as Marron and his master. Deep down, he actually still held a certain degree of respect for Dr. Mo. After all, his rather impressive medical skills and the longevity art had both been passed down from him. But unfortunately, fate played cruel tricks. It seemed heaven had destined that the two of them could not coexist in the same world, even leading them into a deadly clash, with Dr. Mo unexpectedly dying at his own hands. As Han Li sighed over these sentiments stirred by his surroundings, Marron had already led him to Elder Li's residence.